There's a lot of gang activity and violence. The streets is very hot right now. There's a lot of people worried about killings. They realize it's not as safe to just be out in the streets like it used to be. You know, our kids can't play in the streets like they used to.
People are getting killed at bus stops. Kids are getting shot going to school. These fools are crossing the line.
That's not something that kids should have to worry about.
If they kill somebody on our side, we're going to retaliate.
It works both ways, though. It's the same thing.
You know, if we don't talk about it, it's going to be a lot of bloodshed.
The people be coming around shooting and drive-by and stuff like that when we're having these little family parties and stuff.
You stayed in your own neighborhood.
It's our church. It was your neighborhood at one time, but now we're in this neighborhood too now.
The killers got to stop. That's the bottom line.
We should be bigger than that. We should be able to control this.
Something's got to be done about this. That's why I'm here.
The general principles of mediation apply across the board. However, there are some distinctive aspects of working with groups that require special attention and approaches. For instance, mediation of a gang dispute usually involves more caucusing or shuttle diplomacy than other kinds of group mediation, where violence is not involved. In the case of conflicts between gangs, it is nearly impossible to get the parties to sit down together. The only way to accomplish this is through shuttle diplomacy. Most, if not all, the mediation work with gangs is done by going back and forth between the sides. In fact, there are times when both sides never actually sit together, but the conflict is resolved through shuttle diplomacy. Mediators of these types of conflicts are usually former gang members who have become gang intervention workers, and they can do what law enforcement cannot do.
Law enforcement cannot go into these communities and deal with the community. These cats not going to step up to law enforcement and say, we need you to help us get this resolved. Can you help us do this here? That's not going to happen because of the trust and the things that we've been through and the trust factor that we have in the different communities. Then we get these calls. Then we know who's who in what neighborhoods. We know who to contact to help bring some resolution about. And with that, law enforcement say, if there's a shooting, then they'll give us a call, and hopefully we can stop a retaliation that will create a back and forth, that will create a stack of body bags.
The only way gang intervention workers can be effective mediators is by upholding 100% the most important principle of mediation, and that is the principle of confidentiality. Law enforcement cannot ensure confidentiality. The opposite is true. Furthermore, gang intervention workers who mediate neighborhood wars must have what's called a license to operate. Their personal qualities, tried and tested integrity, a passion for their work and their neighborhoods are of the highest standards.
Every day, my organization, which is a Black and Latino organization, we deal with this problem, we face with this problem daily. And we go out as a team, Black and brown, not only to talk how it should be, or to talk that this is how things was, but to actually show that this can still go on. We practice what we preach. And this brings a major effect even on us being allowed to come in and have these conversations in some neighborhoods.
Neutrality means having no stake in the outcome. The parties own the outcome, not the mediator.
And I stand firm on being neutral to any conflict that I'm involved in. If I see a waiver at all, then I'm gonna back up and dismiss myself from that.
Because the parties own the outcome, they have to come up with how and what they want to agree on. The success of any mediation depends on the quality of the preparation. Mediators need to agree that the timing is right for good to come of the mediation, that the intervention will do no harm, in fact will do good, who should be at the table from the different sides, who should mediate, and what is a neutral, safe space for the mediation. For the most effective negotiation, the sides need to be hurting equally. They need to be war-weary. We call this a hurting stalemate. This is the best time for a mediator to intervene.
Everything is negotiable when the time is right. I think when the players want peace, no longer want war, then everything is negotiable. At some point, some guys have the upper hand and are less apt to negotiate over a neighborhood that hand is not so great.
Once the decision is made to intervene, the mediators need to identify who should be at the table. These individuals are often called representatives or ambassadors.
The issues are so gravely that if you got the wrong parties at the table, then it could have a worse outcome than it was before the mediation. So if I can get some of those together, the right person, the right people, to at least to make the first initial contact, who can then refer me to who needs to be at the table, or who can sit down and represent one side or another in those communities as an ambassador or somebody with a license to operate, and then that's a go. That throws up a green flag to go.
What to do when the parties won't come to the table?
I think that sometimes I just continue to have conversation, maybe even with dinner with a couple of them, and sit down and go to a park, or sit down in somebody's front yard, and we have these conversations whenever possible about the reality of peace over death in the communities, life for the kids instead of imprisonment, and see if we can get some open ears there. If we can get some open ears, then we try to do that. If not, we just try to get some issues resolved where I can at least try to get somebody to commit to stop the killing, stop the shooting, until it's ready. Some fires gotta burn for a minute.
How long can the shuttle diplomacy take?
We would get some ambassadors from either side and start a dialogue first with them to even see if how close this is to being able to come to the table. It doesn't have to be a set number of times. It can be one time, it can be 25 times. I would say before getting it to the table, before it sit down, maybe 4 to 6 times.
How many cases get resolved before the conflict even gets to the table?
There are not many that get resolved before the issues come to the table, because for the most part, there's been war for quite a long time, and they haven't found a way to get out of that yet.
Pre-mediation is when you begin talking to each side separately to see if you can bring them to the table. During these separate meetings, you will hear them blame the other side for all the troubles and insist that the others cannot be trusted. The mediator must listen actively. Notice how Dion lets the guys know he gets what they say and what they're feeling.
Understand, you know, you're tired of the killings, the senseless killings. You're tired of having to watch your back. You're tired of having to watch out for what may happen or what could possibly happen. I get it. I understand it.
When speaking to one side at a time, I would bring some of this misery up and have them agree that this is an issue for them. And as well as the other side would be talked to and would also agree that this here, it has to stop. They have to stop. The people have to stop going to jail for life. The kids have to stop dying. The mothers have to stop, you know, and there's a lot. And by the time we get it to the table, we would definitely ask, would this agreed from both sides that this needs to stop on either side of this conflict? And they can both start out by agreeing on that.
To break through the resistance to a meeting, the mediator has to explain how the mediation can help the sides find common ground and how the situation can only get worse if they don't find a mutually acceptable solution. Let's take a look at what pre-mediation would look like in an interpersonal conflict.
I think it's been pretty clean since then.
Right up until high school, and since he started high school, he's been ditching, and now it's been 3 days straight, and it can't happen. You know, I'm going to have to send him back to juvenile hall.
Oh, man.
So I just wanted to give you a heads up and see if you knew anything about him, what's going on, you know.
I think that should be the last resort, if that's possible, you know. If we could find some type of alternative.
After the separate meetings and the parties have agreed to meet together, the success of the mediation will depend largely on how well the mediators prepare, where they decide to hold the meeting, how the mediators plan to divide up their roles during the mediation, what the ground rules will be, and much more.
I think mediation should take place in a neutral place, in a place that I don't think that everybody should agree at out front about the neutrality of the place itself.
Historically, the sites of mediations have been kept confidential even from the participants.
It should be something that everybody agrees to, but it needs to be kept in close confidentiality.
Participants will be driven to the site or told where the site is at the last minute often. This is to prevent any side from staking outside and causing problems. Keeping the mediation confidential actually means keeping it confidential from law enforcement too.
If law enforcement ever came and asked for information, this is not our role. We do community intervention, we do hardcore gang intervention, and none of my employees would be any good to what we do if they got on the stand one time about any of this, because they lose their license to operate. They can no longer operate in these communities. So having a conversation about what, we don't talk about who did what, we don't talk about names of people, we're not specific about cliques. We in there to help address some of the stuff that may have or may not have came up in the community, to work out some things that if we successful, they won't see the worst side of it or continue to see the worst side of it.
My name's Johnny, and I'm thankful that you guys are here together. You know that there's been a lot of tension. You know, and I want to lay some of the ground rules. Whatever we talk about in here, you know, stays here. You know, it should stay right here. You know, because you know rumors out there starts leading to other things, and we don't want that. I'm glad they send you guys, you know, because you're good leaders out there in your neighborhoods. If you could, you know, and you have a phone, you know, I would appreciate it if you could turn them off, because we don't want to get distracted by family or friends or anybody. You know, we want to take care of business right here. And that's about it. You know, we want to just, if there's something where, you know, it gets a little flared up and you need a little time out, time out, just let us know, you know, and then we'll have a break. You know, if you guys feel, you know, like you want a break or you feel you want to have a break, just let us know and we'll have a little break. Does that sound good?
Yes, I can respect that.
All right, thank you.
So, and once again, we just don't want anyone to point fingers. We want to let each other say what they have to say, make their points, you know, be respectful. You know, this is a time for us to just listen, you know, listen and be open-minded. And you guys took the first step in being here. So again, I appreciate it.
Now we'll see the mediator make the opening statement in a probation violation case.
Today we're going to have a mediation to discuss what's going on, what's happening, to try to come to some type of resolution. It's going to be very neutral. A mediation, we don't judge each other. We give each other an opportunity to speak and hear what each other has to say. And it's a very comfortable, safe environment that we want to have here. What I want to do is first start by setting some ground rules that we can follow. And the first one is, let's not interrupt each other. That's a very big thing. If you interrupt while the other is speaking, we have a tough time moving forward.
When you set the ground rules, make sure that you get each person to agree to the ground rules, so that if you have to enforce them, you can say, you agreed not to interrupt each other.
And come into a resolution. Can we agree to that?
Sure.
Yeah. Can we agree with that, to let each other speak and talk?
Sometimes it's harder for one party to talk openly than for another, especially when there is an imbalance of power. See what the mediator does to help Bobby speak up about his problems when he's at the table with the person who has complete power over his future, the probation officer. Often a meeting breaks down and the mediator needs to talk to the parties separately. There are several reasons for calling a separate meeting. One is to give the sides a break from the tensions of the difficult conversation. Two, it's for getting information about underlying problems that the parties can't feel safe enough to express in the mediation. Three, it's an opportunity to balance the power. In any conflict, there is usually some imbalance of power. That is certainly the case when a youth on probation has a conflict with the probation officer. So let's see the circumstances under which the mediator calls for a separate meeting in the probation case.
Or something like that. Look at you. All you do.
Look, I'm here.
You're here.
All right? Mike wanted me to come and hear what you had to say.
Exactly, because that's all your fucking job is.
Sorry.
Okay,
so let me tell you.
Guys, I'm going to ask you to please, we agreed in the beginning that we were going to listen to each other. We're going to let each other speak.
I'm not
correct?
hearing anything. I'm
Okay,
not hearing
so
anything.
this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do.
For like the
listen to me. Bobby, this is what we're going to do. This is voluntary. If you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here.
No, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here with her.
Okay, I understand that. But obviously there's something going on and you want to fix the problem. We talked about this before. And this is the way we do it. We have to talk about it.
We have a problem.
So
we have a problem. He's violating his parole.
If there is a problem. Okay, we're going to take a break. We're going to take a break. Yeah. Come on, Bobby. Let's talk.
Make sure to take a look at the separate meeting section of the video on the probation violation case. You'll see there how the mediator talks to each party during the separate meetings. Notice how the mediator talks to Bobby differently than he talks to the probation officer. This is how he is balancing the power, by encouraging Bobby to speak up, and by getting the probation officer to listen to Bobby.
So again, I just want to thank you for, coming back and having a willingness to find a way to move forward. So right now, let's continue with what you were saying about home and telling us what's happening.
When the parties have heard each other and are ready to negotiate, you can begin the problem-solving stage. Ideally, you'll want to start this stage of the mediation by identifying the common ground you heard from the two sides.
Everybody in this table has something in common, right? You guys want to live, happily in your own neighborhoods. You do too, right? You want to see your little folks, your little baby boys and girls grow. Now, we're here because we want to make this happen and try to start the process of making this happen. And you guys have credibility and you have credibility. Now, I think that it needs to start with you guys.
In order for the problem-solving stage of the mediation to get off to a good start, the mediator needs to set the agenda. This means identifying the problems that need to be solved. We will now see an example of a mediation that is beginning to get resolved. But that doesn't happen every time. Sometimes, no matter how good the mediators are running the process, the parties are not ready to negotiate for a solution.
Sometimes we have to remind different communities that these communities weren't divided and that people did coexist without being violently disagreeable. We have to and must go back to learning how to disagree without being so violently disagreeable.
So what can we do? What can we do to coexist? That's a great word that you use. What can we do?
Well, we need to have some kind of rules. We definitely have to have some kind of
major
rules.
ground rules.
Some rules.
And follow them to the T.
And you know what? It might have to be with the weapons and stuff, and we might have to set times or, when people can cross in each other's neighborhood and stuff like that. Because that's a lot when innocent people are getting hurt. My family
crossing paths. The black and the brown should be able to come together. We're in this together, man.
Definitely.
We should be able to make this happen. All this unnecessary drama, we shouldn't have to go through. We should be the bigger person about the situation. All the little kids shouldn't have to suffer because of our mistakes, because of our immaturities. We should be able to step over this.
Notice how the mediators keep the parties on track and how they encourage the parties to keep going forward.
It takes a lot of heart, to do this, and it's not going to be easy, but you guys are headed the right way, and I feel that with your guys, leadership, all these little issues of writing and all these things that you guys are going to have to agree on, it's going to happen.
When finalizing the agreement, the mediator needs to go over the agreement point by point, write down every detail, and get the final agreement signed by the parties.
This is wonderful. Also, another thing that we mentioned was a ceasefire. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Safe passage. Yeah.
Most definitely.
For our kids. What about going to school? Yeah.
They gotta be safe at school, man. They gotta be safe. That's the main reason why I'm here,
The main boulevard, split our hoods up, that's the safe passage. You cross that line, you ask for problems, man.
I agree.
The very last agreement to make, and the most important part of this stage, is an agreement by the parties on a plan for how they will conduct themselves if it seems that one or the other side has broken the agreement. In other words, how the parties can solve their own problems in the future without a mediator. Let's see an example of that kind of an agreement in the probation violation case.
I think the next thing that we should talk about is how do you keep an open line of communication between the two of you, from this point forward. Do you have any suggestions or ideas on that?
Now let's see how the mediator ends a successful mediation by congratulating the parties on their effective work and by finalizing the agreement.
This is great.
It is.
Well, I just wanted to thank you, for taking the time. I'm glad we were able to talk and come to some type of resolution. We could definitely move forward from this with a great outcome.
Intervention workers use this period of peace immediately following an agreement to engage the larger community in addressing the conditions that have led to violence. The post-agreement phase takes as long as the war itself, sometimes even longer. So it can be a painful, long time. It can seem not to be going anywhere. The agreement can blow up in your face, either by accident or deliberately because of those spoilers who want to derail the process.
We have to dig in. We have to talk to the neighborhoods. We have to talk to the families. The families have to understand this is not just a neighborhood issue. The families have to say, no, we're not going for this anymore. Everybody can coexist here. We need the community to stand up about this. And we have conversation outside the neighborhood with the community. The cats that belong in gangs come out of these houses in the communities.
Any agreement is fragile, and it's important to monitor how people are reacting. It's also important that when conflicts flare up, the response has to be immediate.
To contain some of the crises or to curb some of the issues that come up, we have to have an immediate response. We may get calls from the community, from law enforcement about there's an issue going on, somebody's down, there's a murder, and we try to respond within from 0 to 1 hour to make sure we are out there and effective. Work is within the first 24 hours is the most crucial of any shooting or a major fight that can create war. Somebody need to be called. Somebody need to know who to call. And some dialogue need to take place immediately.
In this and all phases of conflict resolution, the importance of relationship building is now and for the future. It's a lifelong job. The same ambassador 5 years from now may not be the one who signed the document you just agreed on. You've got to find out who he passed on his ambassadorship to. Who is deemed worthy of that? Will this guy have a level head? Will he be at the table? Or will he want war? And it goes on. And the mediator has to do the maintenance all the time.
I got a lot of reasons why I do this work. One of the reasons is I want to give something back. I want to help turn around some things that we were partially responsible for. I want to help save kids. I want kids to know it's another way. And just because they were taught a certain way doesn't mean that that way was correct.
So I love my community, and I wanted to see it not get out of hand, and there's a lot of really violence right now going on.
But they're not just gonna do it, you know what I mean? So that's why this is the time. I think this is the perfect time, the perfect moment for me to get in and help come to some type of resolution.